Hello friends, my name is Taylor. If you're new here, if you're not, welcome back. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about self-care. When we think of self-care right now, we tend to think of bath bombs, of face masks, these perfectly Instagrammable moments, matching pajama sets, just anything with that big treat yourself attitude. And while sometimes that version of self-care can be exactly what you need, sometimes it's not. And sometimes it can actually make you feel worse afterwards. So then you might even feel some guilt about, okay, I've done all the things that I'm supposed to do to make myself feel better, and I feel worse. Now I feel guilty because I'm somehow doing self-care wrong. Like, how does that make sense? So let's talk a little bit about why that is. First, what is self-care? Simply put, it's a way of caring for ourselves, but I think if you dive a little bit deeper, it's a way of caring for our needs. And that's going to be important later because we have different versions of self-care that are going to meet different needs. Self-care isn't a one-size-fits-all. It's not always going to be a bubble bath with a bath bomb. And I want to talk a little bit about how to make sure that we are doing the right self-care for what we need in that moment. So let's talk about how to figure out what type of self-care you actually need and not just doing whatever Pinterest or Instagram is telling us to do. So it's important to know that there are 6 different types of self-care. Number 1, we have physical. This is going to be sleep, nutrition, going to the doctor, the things that care for our physical body. This can also include movement, like going to the gym, making sure that we are getting enough movement to keep our bodies stable and relax and have all of those nice endorphins, but also keeping our body healthy. Number 2 is emotional self-care. These are going to be the things that balance our emotions. So this is going to be things like journaling, talking to a therapist, sitting and trying to process our own feelings, identifying them, doing that emotional work. And there can be overlap between 2 things, right? Like going to the gym is great for my physical and my emotional health because those endorphins really kick in and they really make me feel good and they help with emotional regulation. So there are certain things that are going to touch a bunch of different spheres, and there are some that are really only geared towards one. And that's going to help us identify what we need to do in that moment. The third type is mental or intellectual. These are going to be things that push us mentally or intellectually. So this might be reading something nonfiction. It might be learning something new. It could be some form of creative expression or even reducing mental clutter. So for me, something that works really well is doing a brain dump. So if I've got a lot going on in my head, I'll just write it all out because it's going to reduce a lot of the mental stuff going on upstairs and get it onto paper so that I can forget about most of it. The fourth type is social. This is going to be pouring into our relationships, achieving that sense of belonging, and really just connecting with others. For this one, it could be calling a friend. It could also be setting a boundary and making sure that you have that healthy relationship with that person. It could be spending quality time with someone. Or, if you want to take it a little step further, it doesn't have to be hanging out in person. You could hop on a video game with somebody and talk to them over Discord. Number 5, we are looking at spiritual self-care. So it's very important for a lot of people that they are in touch with their spirituality. If that's not you, that's okay. But for a lot of people, this is a really big key part in things. So it's going to look different for everybody because everybody has different spiritual beliefs. So for you, it might be connecting with nature. It might be praying. It might be going to church. It might be reading the Bible. It's going to look different for every single person. And that's okay. For people who maybe don't feel like they are religious, but they still feel spiritual, it might be connecting with their core values. And number 6, last but not least, these are going to be your practical self-care. These are the ones that nobody likes to think of as self-care because they are boring. This is you're doing the laundry, you're doing the dishes, you are putting out your clothes for tomorrow, you are meal prepping. These are the things that get you through each day. And each type of self-care is going to feel different depending on which stage of life you're in, which season of life you're going through. So you might have times where your physical well-being is not doing as well, and sometimes where your physicality is at the peak of your life. But that doesn't mean that mentally you're doing okay. So you can be doing okay in one realm, but not the others, and vice versa. So then here's my little caveat to this. We have self-care and then we have self-indulgence. And this is where I think a lot of people get it a little bit twisted. So lots of people will buy into that treat yourself mentality, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But if you take it to the extreme, you might get some self-indulgent or even some like self-destructive behaviors. And that's what we're trying to avoid here. That's not to say like eating a piece of cake is going to ruin your life. It's not. But eating cake for every single meal, every single day is not going to be healthy for your physical health, right? Like that's just not going to be something that your body is okay with. That's a little bit what we're talking about here. We're talking about moderation and the fact that it's not just a one size fits all. So how can we tell the difference between self-care and self-indulgence? The key differentiator here is going to be that self-indulgence feels good short term, but it doesn't always feel good long term, and it might actually be detrimental. On the other hand, self-care can feel a little bit uncomfortable at times, but ultimately it's good for your long-term health. So doing the laundry isn't necessarily fun for anyone, but it might be something that you wake up tomorrow and you're like, okay, I have clean laundry. I don't have to do anything else. I'm good to go. Simply put, it supports us instead of just avoiding something. A really good example of this could be ordering takeout. So let's say you've had a really, really rough day or a really rough week. You've still got a million things on your plate and you're like, I need to eat tonight, but I don't feel like cooking. I don't really have the time to cook. It's totally okay to get takeout that night. That being said, if you're just like, I don't feel like it, I'm gonna get takeout, that might not be so good for your budget or other areas of your life. And ultimately, only you can decide that. Nobody can make that decision for you. So the way to decide that is to ask yourself, is this action going to recharge me or is it just distracting me? So I wanna go back to like the bath bomb metaphor because again, that was so prevalent on Instagram for a really long time that was like the only way you could do self-care, right? But if I have a paper due at midnight, I'm gonna feel overwhelmed and stressed by it, but taking a 45-minute long bubble bath is not going to help. In fact, it is going to make things so much worse. And I'm probably not going to relax because I'm gonna be thinking about the things I need to do. So how do you know what type of self-care you need? Start practicing some intentional check-in. Ask yourself, what's draining me right now? What's something I've been avoiding? What kind of support would I give to a friend if they were going through this? Would I cook for them? Would I help them make freezer meals? Would I do their laundry? Would I sit with them while they vent? What would you do for a friend who's going through the same thing? I also want you to think of self-care as a toolbox, not a to-do list. You don't have to do every single one of these things every single day. In fact, that can add stress and make you feel like you have to do so much that it gets overwhelming. And that can be daunting. And leave the Instagram, the aesthetic, the Pinterest stuff behind. Focus on what's going to feel restorative and not what looks performative, right? Focus on what it gives you, not what it looks like to other people. So you don't have to earn rest. You don't have to prove to other people that you deserve this care. You're allowed to meet your own needs even if they aren't pretty or aesthetic. So anyway, thank you for sticking around. I would love to hear what kind of self-care you've been needing the most recently. Leave a comment below and I'd love to chat with you. I'll see you next time.